From the town of Tyngsborough, I'm Rona Camille. This is Entering Tyngsborough.
I've always kind of felt that I'm on borrowed time here, right? It's kind of like, look, they didn't give me till 3, and then I made it to 5, then I made it to 7, then I made it to 14, then I made it to 15. So I was kind of like one day at a time, and every day that I wasn't, either in the hospital or wasn't having an issue, I just kind of I was happy that I didn't have a situation.
In this episode of the podcast, we talk about second chances and how one act of generosity gave a Tyngsborough firefighter the chance to become a father, public servant, and an advocate for life. Brad.
Yes.
Welcome to Tyngsborough's front porch.
Thank you, Roni. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you have quite, an interesting story. But before we get into that, please introduce yourself and your role within the town of Tyngsborough community.
My name is Brad Biscornet. I'm currently a captain in the Tyngsborough Fire Department.
Okay. Typically on this program, we talk about the various personnel in town and how it, relates to the town and all that. But we'll talk about that. You're a fireman, you're a fire captain, but your life story, and this, we're taping this on the week before Father's Day in June. Your story is so unique because you are a organ recipient.
Correct.
And so you've lived an extraordinary life. So let's start from the beginning. Walk us through your heart condition, and were you born with it, or what did that mean growing up?
Correct. So I was born 1973, and I had a whole host of problems when I was born. I had tracheostomy of Fallot, I had WPW, I had a hole in my mitral valve which needed to be replaced. The doctors essentially told my parents, he's lucky if he makes age 3. I was blue. I was, having a difficult time. Went home was in the hospital for a little bit, then went home till probably about the age of 3. They decided, 2.5, they decided that they were going to have to do surgery. I had multiple surgeries. One of them actually was about 72 hours long. I had world-renowned Dr. Castaneda, who was a surgeon who has since passed, but he was the guy that did all the stuff. So surgery was successful. They replaced the mitral valve. As time went on, they pretty much said I couldn't play contact sports, but besides that, just do what you can do. Regardless of that warning, I still skateboarded. I still did a whole bunch of stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing. I got surgery scars, and I have crash and burn scars from all the other stuff that I used to do.
It's the 80s.
So. Exactly. It was the 80s. A different time.
A different time.
Exactly. So then what ended up happening was, as childhood went on, my WPW, which is Wolff Parkinson White syndrome, essentially it's a fiber in your heart. The electrical current in your heart kind of spins round and round and gets caught in this fiber, and it causes your heart to have these arrhythmias. Mm-hmm. These arrhythmias would happen at any point in time. They started to get more frequent. I was at a restaurant in just outside of Laconia one time when I was about 7, 8 years old, and I wasn't feeling well. Actually passed out in the driveway. Saw the big bright light for a couple of minutes, and I woke up to my dog licking my face and my mother actually giving me CPR. So that's when they decided that something essentially had to be done. So they gave me some medication, some amiodarone, which was not prescribed for adults. So I had to go to the doctor about every week to get checked up.
How old were you then?
7 or 8 at that point in time. Yeah. So, unfortunately, I'd seen the bright light probably 3 or 4 times so far. So they gave me this medication, which was working really good. Pretty much worked out really great till just before I got into college. I needed to, because I grew up, I needed a new heart. I needed a new, mitral valve, so they replaced that. No issue there. Then I ran into some other arrhythmia stuff. They tried to get rid of this WPW multiple times in the cath lab. They couldn't do it. And essentially, they had to put in a pacemaker. And that's kind of where it kind of went from there. It was pretty good for a long period of time.
Right.
And then, of course, my adult life, it got a little more challenging at at that point.
Sure. Not many people come to face with mortality at a young age.
No.
How did that shape the outlook on your life?
I would,
Especially in age 7, age 8, and as you go into your teenage years and adulthood.
right. I think it was always that, I've always kind of felt that I'm on borrowed time here, right? It's kind of like, look, they didn't give me till 3, and then I made it to 5, then I made it to 7, then I made it to 14, then I made it to 15. So I was kind of like one day at a time, and every day that I wasn't, either in the hospital or wasn't having an issue, I just kind of I was happy that I didn't have a situation. I think mentally it was difficult because I had these underlining things all the time, and so even fun times that the school the next day was going to Kennedy Lake Park for a field trip, and of course I was terrified that something was possibly going to happen at Kennedy Lake. My parents wouldn't be around, the doctors wouldn't be around, and I even felt as a kid if I lived across the street from the hospital I would be safer.
Right.
So physically it didn't really hold me up too much, but there was that mental aspect of worrying and being concerned that when the next the next shoe was going to drop, essentially.
You mentioned that you were on borrowed time.
Yeah.
What was the turning point when your condition worsened? You mentioned as you got older. It worsened.
Right. So it was okay, like through college, pretty much no issues. I had met my wife and told her I kind of have this little heart condition, and it's not really a big deal, no problem. Obviously, that was that was a blatant lie at that point in time. I didn't realize it was, but it ended up being that. So around, I would say 2006, it started to get a little worse. It started to affect me more, the arrhythmias, the just the not feeling well, the sluggish, that type of stuff. 2007, I was working at that time part-time or on a call basis at the Tyngsborough Fire Department. I also had a corporate job. I was a graphic designer, lived in a cube pretty much all day long, doing computer work, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was still able to work and function doing that job because it didn't take a lot. 2007, I would say right around November, December, things were looking not so great. I had a lot of fluid built up, a lot of bloating, that type of stuff. And they said, we're not sure what we're going to have to do. At that point in time, I was being seen at Boston Children's Hospital. So
you're a full-blown adult, grown man.
Exactly. Wearing a Winnie the Pooh Johnny, and they had you would go for an echocardiogram, and they would put in there's a bunch of selection of Disney movies essentially you could watch as you were doing this. So, but it was very comfortable because at Children's, if you're seen as a kid there, you don't outgrow the place, and so you can stay there. So it was very comfortable for me to be there. It was a place I would know. My doctors, I had been there for years. I was no issue. So then come January 2007, they kind of said, we're going to have to talk about maybe, getting a new heart. I was like, are you kidding me? A new heart? This is insane, right? like the Fisher-Price My First Heart that I'm going to be getting, right? And so they kind of did some workup, and they said, yeah, we're eventually going to, have to do this. We're going to go through it, this and that. So right around St. Patrick's Day, I was really not doing well at all, very lethargic, very bloated, having these arrhythmias, having all sorts of problems, just not great, not a great situation. I went to the doctors on a Friday, and I said, I'm not feeling well, and they said, we're going to work you up for a transplant. Why don't you come back on Monday? Let's see how you can do. Okay, no problem. The weekend came, Saturday night, I woke up and I could barely move and get to the bathroom. Wow. It was just very weak. Everything was kind of shutting down on me. My wife called 911. Of course, the Tyngsborough Fire Department showed up, and at that time we had Patriot or Trinity Ambulance.
Sure.
They showed up. They transported me to Lowell General Hospital. Lowell General Hospital said, we want nothing to do with this. We're going to send you immediately to Boston Children's. They sent me to Boston Children's. And then they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have to do the transplant, but unfortunately there's a chance you may need an additional transplant for your I believe it's for your liver. So it's going to be a heart and liver transplant. And they said, we can't do that here. We may have to do it in Texas. And not to mention, we can't do this at Boston Children's, you're going to have to go to the Brigham. And I'm like, this is terrifying. I can't go to a different hospital, even though the Brigham was essentially across the catwalk.
Across the street, right.
Across the catwalk, right? You didn't have to leave the building.
Right.
I'm like, this is terrifying. I can't do this. So they've decided that I just needed the heart, just needed the heart. And they brought me over to the Brigham, and I said, this is ridiculous. I said, I'm feeling great now. Of course, they're giving me with IV meds, that type of stuff.
Right.
I said, I'm ready to go home. I don't need to be here. And they said, no, you need to stay here, and you're too bad. You need to essentially wait for the heart. And the weird thing is, you have to be healthy enough to get a heart, but sick enough to be high on the list for you to receive the heart. So, they gave me some meds. It's not. And I said, listen, I'm good. Take me off the meds. I'm going to wait at home. I said, all right, no problem. We'll humor you here. They took me off the meds, and about an hour and a half, it was like,
you needed to be back on.
I absolutely needed to be there. Absolutely needed to be there. I could not do anything. I was lethargic. I couldn't move. Couldn't do anything.
Wow.
So I waited in the hospital for a new heart on the floor. There was many other people waiting for hearts on the floor. I waited for 3 months. And then we got to Memorial Day weekend, and the doctors came in and they said, essentially, this is the weekend. We're going to get you high as we can up on the list. If you don't have it by the end of this weekend, you're probably not going to make it. So get your stuff in order and figure out what you're going to do. I mean, we kind of made jokes about it. Me and my wife, who was my best support in the hospital, we talked about, in the process of doing a kitchen renovation and where we were going to go on trips and that type of stuff to try to keep our mind off of this stuff.
Sure.
And, we had funeral arrangements already set up, who I wanted to be there, all that other stuff. It's really kind of bizarre and kind of crazy that you're doing that stuff.
This is a year before we met, actually.
Yes.
What do you remember the most leading up to that moment from that weekend?
I think the waiting and the waiting for the chance and knowing that I think at that point in time I was so sick and I was so tired of kind of dealing with this stuff. It was like, this is it. If we get the heart, this is great, and if we don't, we don't. I mean, it's kind of like it was one of those things that it would just I had been waiting and dealing with this medical stuff for so long. I didn't think it was possible to just, kind of get it over with.
At this point, how old are you at this point? You're in your 30s.
Yes, my 30s. Yeah. My 30s, yes. So, I had lived pretty good so far. Like I said, I was on borrowed time. I got 30 years out of it. And it kind of, it is what it is. And, unfortunately that, in the hall, there's, maybe 20 other people that are waiting for hearts, right? And so I'm not going to say it was a competition, right? But, I remember my parents coming in and they were furious that the guy, Paul, the guy's name was across the hall from me, he got a heart. And they were furious. How come you didn't get it? And obviously we can speak about the more scientific stuff around it, but, it has to be the right weight. It has to be the right blood type. It has to be, it has to fit your mold, essentially, right?
Yeah, you can't just go off a shelf and say, oh,
exactly,
new heart.
Exactly. And you can't, they do a really good job of, you can't buy a heart either, right? I mean, you need to wait, you need to be in order, you need to do what you need to do. And so just waiting for that heart and doing what you need to do. But in the meantime, I'm riding an exercise bike and I got this PICC line in my neck, and because I'm still trying to be healthy enough to get this heart.
You're like basically near death, but you're still doing your things that you're doing.
Correct.
Staying fit.
Correct. I'm trying. I'm doing my best I can, and every day that goes by that you're lying in a bed, and playing Xbox or whatever you're going to do is actually going against, you keeping fit, So, they say they used to say like, a 2 days in bed was essentially like, 2 days in the hospital essentially is like being 2 weeks in bed and not moving and not doing anything. So everything just kind of sits in, and, so I'm trying to walk around. I'm doing the best I can very slowly with, 2 IV poles, walking in the hallway, and just trying to keep fit enough for the surgery.
Brad, what is going on through your psyche while you're sitting there? And I know you're going to lead us through the moment you got, but what is going through while you're at the Brigham in the hospital?
Right.
What's going through your psyche at that time?
So I really, I gotta say, I really didn't stress about it. I was like, I'm not a huge religious type person, but I was like, if the big guy wants this to happen, it's going to happen. There was people on the floor that would watch the news and look for accidents. Every time med flight came in, they thought that was an organ that was coming in. Back then, there was actually a list on the computer that you could go on and see where you were on the list. We never went on that, but there was people down the hall saying, "Oh, hey, did you hear Paul's number 2? Hey, did you hear Steve's number 3?" I mean, they were very obsessed with that type of stuff. And I was just kind of, if it happens, it happens. I'm hoping, I'm praying it happens. I had support from my family, from my wife, from my parents, all these people. But I mentally just said it's going to happen. And the support staff at the Brigham, the hospital, the nurses, the doctors, everybody was like, we're pulling for you. We're doing whatever we can do to try to do it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, the hourglass is up.
That's heavy stuff. That's heavy, but also, having known you for a long time, so, I mean, that's you. That's just who you are. Walk us through the moment you found out that a match was available.
All right. So the way the system is, so probably a month before that, they came into the room and they said, we think we have a match, but you're secondary to the match. Okay. So that means that there's a primary and a secondary person. Okay. So they say, we're not going to know till tomorrow morning, but we're going to prep you. We're going to put you NPO, which essentially means no fluids or no food for the next 24 hours because you're going to be going to surgery.
You're fasting.
Exactly, fasting, exactly. So I kind of had my last meal, right, which was usually chocolate chip cookies, Chips Ahoy's, and like the biggest glass of milk I can possibly have, right? And so
out of all the cookies in the world, you picked Chips Ahoy's?
I liked them, yeah. As a kid, I used to just eat sleeves of them at a time, and I know it's probably not the greatest thing to be saying, but and so at that point in time, that's what seemed to work. And so I had my meal, and I said, all right, and went to bed. And then the next morning, they came in and they said, unfortunately, the first guy that was on deck, it was a match for him, so you're going to be you're gonna wait some more.
So back to Chips Ahoy's you went.
Exactly. So, and again, my parents come down, they're furious. How come this wasn't it? Blah, 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 blah. And I said, look, it wasn't time. It was not time. So then Memorial Day weekend comes. Like I said, they said, look, you don't get this by the end of the week. Start playing your, call the hearse. You're going to be done here. And so the weekend came, I believe it was a Sunday night. They came in, they said, we think we have a match for you. Same deal, same routine, Chips Ahoy cookies, big glass of milk, and hope it works out. Next morning they said, okay, this is it. You got it. Awesome. So they wheel me down there, they put me under, and we go in, and that's great. We're super excited. We're super happy. Day or so later after I come out of it and really get into it, I'm like, this is great. This is awesome. And start my new life, ready to go. About 3 or 4 days later, again, it gets really hazy at this point in time. I was under a lot of medication.
Sure.
My wife was definitely in charge. I couldn't make any decision at that point in time. They
what are you talking about? She's in charge all the time.
Exactly. They actually had there was a clot in the new heart, and so they had to go in and try to straighten that stuff out. So that actually, what was supposed to be a quick recovery of, you got your new heart, you're going to do a little bit of recovery, you're going to do what you need to do, we're going to get you out of here in a week or so, and you're going to go home and enjoy life, we'll put you on some rejection meds, and you're good to go. And that clot actually turned into another 3 months in the hospital.
Wow.
And that was with a trach, that was with a lot of medication, that was with, again, seeing the bright light another 2 times. I had coded a couple times when I was there. That was a very difficult time.
What got you through that phase? I know you mentioned your wife Mandra, and you guys
Yes.
have been married. How long have you guys been married?
She's going to kill me now. I think it's 25 years.
Congratulations.
Now. Yeah, thanks.
What got you through that phase when, just the clot, the recovery, And
Yeah.
what role did Manfred play in part of that healing process?
Mandra played an amazing role. She actually handled everything. I mean, I essentially was totally out of it. I was on meds, I was on propofol, I was on all sorts of stuff, and talking ragtime, and just really, she was the one that had to organize things and make decisions and do the stuff that we needed to do the stuff that needed to be done. When I was somewhat aware of what was going on, was essentially just in survival mode at this point in time. I mean, it was all I could do to, make sure that everything was doing what I can do. But I literally sat there. I mean, I had bed sores. I had, right now I'm about 160. My weight's about 160, 165.
But at one point, you've mentioned this in the past,
Yes.
in past publications and in conversations with us and staff, you were down at 70 pounds.
72 pounds, exactly.
And now, you're doing these competitions, Spartan races,
Right.
which is incredible, and it's inspiring, because now I'm like, all right, I need to get my stuff together. What drove you to push your body and mind post-transplant?
So I think it was because, fighting all that stuff and, we've had this conversation with the doc. So by the time we got out of the hospital, it ended up being Labor Day weekend was the time we got out. And I had to climb 2 steps to go in my front door. They said in case of a fire, we want to make sure that you'd be able to get out and get in, which was kind of nonsense because there's no way if there was a fire in my house, I would have gotten out of that house. But I was using a walker. It took me 45 minutes to get up the 2 front stairs of my house because I wanted to do it by myself. I had to relearn how to walk. I had to relearn how to talk, all this other stuff, essentially, because of all this stuff. So when I get out, I was like, I want to do something. Do I want to run the Boston Marathon? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? My sister-in-law used to run these Spartan races, and I was kind of, hey, it's kind of neat to do this and that. So,
yeah. And those are intense.
Those are intense. Those are intense. And so I roped in my buddy Tommy, who's on the fire department, just got promoted to lieutenant, and I said, Tom, let's try to do some of these things. And so we did some Tough Mudders and we did some Spartan races, and we were doing probably 6 or 7 a year for about 5 years. And it's a lot, and it was great. It was a great accomplishment. I used to wear my Donate Life shirts and just to kind of spread awareness and do what you need to do. It was. I just felt that now I really had the ability to go and do the stuff that I kind of always wanted to do. My one regret was always not being able to go to the military. I always wanted to do that, and because of my past history, that that was not a possibility. Of course, at this point in time, it was too late for me to go.
Right.
But I just kind of wanted to say, what can I got this new heart? What can it do? Yeah.
And you've been with the fire department how long? You joined up when?
Yeah, 99. So it was part-time basis for a while, and then after my surgery, I get out and I said I'd like to come back to the fire department. And chief at the time says, essentially, I don't think so. And I said, well, what can I do? And he said, well, you're going to have to go back to the fire academy and get recertified. I said, okay. So we went to the doctor, and I said, I just need this form for you to sign, saying you can go. And the doctor, so the transplant clinic is run on, it's kind of a doctor of the day, essentially. There's like 5 or 6 doctors there, or there was at the time, and whoever's on that week is the one that you see. Not necessarily my doctor, who was Dr. Giverts, who I love, and it would happen to be another doctor, and she goes, I'm not signing, this is crazy. After all this work we put into you, you're going to go back to the fire department? And my wife said, listen, we didn't do all this work for him to sit around and watch Jerry Springer all day long.
Right.
This is what we're doing. So she signed it, and she goes, I just, hopefully you can, whatever, do what you're going to do. She didn't have a problem thinking I could do it, but she's like, it seems like kind of a waste that you're going to go and do this, right? I mean, at any point in time, my life, I probably could have been collecting disability and not doing anything, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then so I went back to the fire academy. I got recertified. I stayed on part-time for a while, and then I got hired full-time and went through a couple of promotions, lieutenant and then captain, and then now I'm actually back to part-time because I want to spend a little more time with my family.
Sure, you made that announcement recently.
Yeah, and do what I want to do.
Yeah,
so.
But you've talked about this again, for people in town or listening to this podcast, being a fireman has been one of your dreams. How does it feel through that whole process to return to the Tyngsborough Fire Department?
It was great. I mean, it's a dream job. I mean, I love it. I love the community. I love being on the rig. I love, doing the calls. I mean, as you know, we don't have tons of fires, and that's okay, because it ends up being a bad day for some people. But the accidents and the medical calls and that type of stuff, I go, and unfortunately or fortunately, I feel I can relate with a lot of these people, right?
I was about to ask you that. How does your experience influence the team, your command staff,
right,
the staff that is under you,
right?
And how do you approach emergency calls?
So first off, it's a great group, right? And there's no secret that obviously the stuff that I've been through, maybe they don't know the exact details, but they know I've had some stuff going on. And we go to medical calls, and again, we have these frequent flyers that call all the time, and we get frustrated because it's 2 a.m. or 3 a.m, and we're going to the same place as that. And I said, look, this is the community, this is the people we need to help out. And sometimes I just got to kind of reality check everybody and say, we got to take care of these people, and it's our job to do so. And so unfortunately, we go to somebody with a cardiac condition or something, and I kind of feel for them, and I say, look, it's it's going to get better. I don't really broadcast and say, hey, by the way, I had in your heart, this isn't a big deal, but I kind of say, yeah, I get it. I've kind of been through I've had some cardiac stuff, and I get it. It's scary, and it's not great, but you got to get this stuff taken care of,
Right.
and go to the hospital and make people feel a little more comfortable for what they do, and what decisions they've made, and realizing that the seriousness of it, and say, look, we only got one chance here. And if you're going to sit here and not go to the hospital, and you could be having a heart attack, we don't want to come back, tomorrow morning and we have a bigger problem. Right. And your family's right here. They love you. They want you to go get checked out, Exactly. And so it's kind of some of that stuff to do that. But again, I mean, my crew is always great. We have, one other full-time guy on with me, and then we have a bunch of part-time guys that actually come in and fill the shifts, and it's always great. I mean, they're great. They're compassionate with the community, and we just do the best we can.
You're wearing the New England Donor Services, and we'll get to that in a moment. The one question before we transition to that, given that this episode will air close to Father's Day weekend, you and your wife Mandra, who you guys have been married for 26 years. You publicly had said once believed that children may not be possible, and you have a son.
Correct. Yeah.
His name is
Darby.
And how old is he?
He's 13.
And when you became a dad, what has fatherhood meant to you?
Well, I mean, it was great. I mean, I had always, like I said, the fact that I was on borrowed time, I never thought about having kids. I never thought about retiring. I never thought about any of that stuff, right? I was lucky if I was going to make, hey, great, I made 21. Hey, great, I made 25. Hey, great, I made 30. And so having the ability to have a child is fantastic. I mean, it's great. It's, he's the love of my life. He's great. 13 years old. He's going in 8th grade next year. I can't believe how fast it's going. But even that, when we announced to my family, especially to my dad, when we were pregnant, he's like, "Wow, what are you doing? You just went through all this stuff, and now you're gonna have a kid, and you're gonna have, it's all this stuff going on." I said, "Well, this is what it's all for.
Sure.
This is what we're doing it for." And of course, there was some concern of, well, that's great. Is this kid now gonna have all this, mayhem of heart problems that you had? So, I did have to do some testing and that type of stuff to make sure that it wasn't, kind of hereditary and this and that. And I don't think at that point it would have mattered if they would have said it may not be. We would have taken the chance anyway.
Sure.
I mean, but yeah, it's great. I mean, Darby's a great kid, and I love spending time with him. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's amazing. And that's amazing. I mean, your story is incredible in its own, but also part of something bigger. And obviously with the volunteer work that you do outside of Tyngsborough, behind every transplant is, a network that makes these moments possible. And that's where the New England Donor Services, come in. And joining us remotely by Zoom is Caitlin Bernabuzzi, who is the Director of Community Affairs for New England Donor Services, just to kind of give us a framing perspective from that angle. Caitlin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What is the mission of New England Donor Services, and how do you support these transplant recipients and donor families like Brad?
So our mission at New England Donor Services as a not-for-profit organization is to save and heal lives through organ and tissue donation. And I think in the simplest form, but also most amazing form, is that we get to help people like Brad. I mean, we get to be kind of on the other side, if you will, on the organ and tissue donation side, but it's all to help people who are desperately in need of that life-saving and healing second chance, that then get to be able to go on to pursue things that they want for their lives and see more years that they didn't think they were going to be able to see, or go on to have a child. I mean, it really is, it's a miracle. And our organization gets to support the other side. So it can sound, it's difficult. I mean, we work with families who are in the face of devastation and loss and death of a loved one. And they're at a moment, a critical decision-making moment at the end of their loved one's life. Are they able to save someone else's life? And that's where New England Donor Services comes in to both support families and help make that gift possible for the people in need of a transplant.
Brad mentioned, the moment that he found out that he was a match was available. Can you walk us what that process is like?
Sure. From the donation side?
Yes.
Definitely. So we, as an organization, there's 350 people that work for New England Donor Services, and we serve 200 hospitals throughout the New England region. So all of those hospitals are mandated to refer patient deaths to us. So when someone is dying in a hospital or has died in a hospital, the opportunity for donation may arise. It's very rare, actually, to be able to be an organ donor. So that's why it really is a miracle when we can see donation happen and transplantation happen and work out so well. Only about 2 to 3% of hospital deaths meet the criteria for someone to be an organ donor. So it's a very small pool of people that can donate. But at that moment, when the hospital makes a referral, we check to see if someone is eligible to donate, that they meet the criteria for donation to be possible. And then we work very closely with families. We check the donor registry to see if someone had indicated their wishes, if they did want to be a donor. And we take all of that information and work with the families to make donation possible. But it sounds maybe simple, but it takes a big network and a big team of people supporting the family, helping to medically manage the donor and make sure that everything can happen to make donation possible. I think Brad talked a little bit about the match portion of transplantation, and it's unique to each donor. So every donor has different criteria, and they match to different people on the list. So that one person getting it over another really has to do more with the urgency, the medical need of the recipient, the blood type, the donor size, distance to transplant center. So there's a lot of criteria of that happen.
A lot of criteria and a lot of science to it. There's still, would you say a hesitation around registering an organ donor? And what are the misconceptions that your organization encounters? And what would you say to someone who might be hesitant even after hearing Brad's story?
Yeah, so there are around 50% of people that are registered as donors right now. We know generally that more people think donation is a great thing and want to help others through donation, but only about 50% of people have actively made that decision to get their heart on their license or register through the health app on their iPhone. So our job in the public affairs team is really to help people understand how beautiful the gift of life is and how they can make such an impact on the lives of other people, as many as 8 people through organ donation and 50 people through tissue donation, and to be able to help someone like Brad. But there are a lot of myths out there, and there's negative TV shows about donation, negative media stories about donation. I think it's just really important to think that this is a very heavily regulated industry. And the team, the 350 people that work for the organization, care deeply about this work. We want it to be a fair and ethical process. We want to help save lives. We want to be good stewards of the gift of donation. one of the biggest myths that I think people continue to believe, even though when you really think about it, it doesn't sound like it could happen. But some people fear that, hey, if I'm a registered donor and the hospital or the EMT sees that heart on my license, they're not going to try to save my life because they want my organs. And we hear that one often. It's very far, very, very far from the truth. First of all, the people that are treating you in an emergency situation are not connected at all to donation and transplantation. Donation can't be an opportunity for someone until after death is declared. And then, like Brad talked about, there are very specific criteria that you have to meet to even become an organ donor. So it's the farthest thing from the healthcare team's mind. They want to be saving their patient's life, and that's you. They're not thinking about someone like Brad who might be waiting. So if that's not true, we see a lot of TV shows that like to dramatize that and make people think that doesn't work out.
Yeah, we had a health fair this weekend, and I was doing the fire department tent, and I also was going over to the Donate Life tent or New England Donor Services tent, and we had 2 or 3 different people say the reason why they weren't on there was because that same scenario. And I said, listen, yeah. I'm a first responder. If I respond to a car accident or I respond to a medical, the last thing I'm doing is going through your wallet to see if you have a heart on your thing, and we're not gonna help you out. It's such a far-fetched scenario. Doctors, first responders, their number one job is to save lives. And so to do that, that's the number one job. And if it goes south and they realize that the person is now deceased, they can do something with it at that point. But in the meantime, nobody is even remotely considering, saying we're not going to do anything because somebody, Joe Blow needs an organ in Maine. I mean, it doesn't make sense. But to her point, between TV shows and that type of stuff, it keeps that lie alive. Essentially, is what it is.
Right. And Caitlin, how many people since the organization has been founded, how many lives have been saved through the mission that you've worked? And do you happen to know, the number of folks that are waiting for tissue donation?
Well, you got me on that one. From the beginning of time with the organization, it's going to be thousands of lives saved. I know that donation continues to increase year upon year. So the last 14 years, there have been increases year upon year in the number of organ donors. Last year, there was a record number of lives saved with over 1,500 transplants happening through New England Donor Services and donors that chose to save lives either through the registry or through their family's authorization. So the numbers keep growing when it comes to transplantation, both the need and the people willing to give, which is great to see. And for tissue, a little bit different. We say around 1.5 million people receive the gift of tissue every year throughout the country. So when we're talking about one organ donor being able to save the lives of 8 through organ donation, and then over 75 people through tissue like skin and bone and corneas and heart valves, like Brad talked about earlier. So it's an incredible gift that people give. And I think the spirit, too, of the donor, I think a lot about our friends that work in these acts of service roles and firefighters and EMTs and nurses in healthcare that have that spirit of wanting to help others. And when I think about the organ donor, it's an incredible gift. It's someone that will never meet the person whose life they're changing immeasurably, but they just want to give so that someone else's life can continue after theirs ends. I think that's a really wonderful thing.
Brad, did you, obviously you never met your donor, but do you know things about them?
So, and again, Caitlin can talk to if this has changed or not, but what happens is you need to write a letter. You start by writing a letter and you send it to New England Organ Donor Bank, and then they reach out to, it's kind of it's anonymous on who your donor is. So then they reach out to the family. They said, your recipient has written you a letter. Would you like to receive this letter? They either say yes or no. We actually wrote a letter maybe 2 or 3 months after I had gotten my heart. They said yes, and then a few months later we received something back. I'm guessing that the donor was maybe Indian or something like that. It was very proper English the way that the letter was written. It wasn't like us Americans are just kind of all over the place with it, right? And so it was very proper. It was very written, very nice. And they had stated essentially it was a young child, or 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid who was very athletic, and they obviously loved him and cared for him, but they were very happy that their organs were able to be donated to me and to a variety of other people. I've always said in the past, I'd love to meet them. I'd love to personally thank them. But they seem to be kind of standoffish after the letter. That was it. And you got to remember, their loss was way bigger than my gain. I was 30 years old, right? They were kids starting his life at 18, 19 years old, and he had passed away. I've gone to many events, and then there's people that vacation with their donor families. One family actually moved in next door so they could be right next to one another. There's people that it's a variety of, I've never spoken to anybody about it, and now we're best friends and we go vacationing together all the time. So there's a wide variety of relationships with these people. And again, I would love to, I'd love to do that. My wife has been writing a book for some period of time, and hopefully it should be done this summer. And then I think at that point in time, I'll probably write another letter. We'll send them a copy of the book, and if they want to reach out, fantastic. I would love it, but I'm not going to pressure them to do that either.
Sure. And Caitlin, how does the organization support donor families through the grieving process?
Definitely a large part of what we do is encourage correspondence between donor families and recipients. But as Brad said, grief is very unique, and everyone's grief journey is going to be different. What they need, how they heal, how time works for them in the healing journey. But we do encourage communication, and especially from the recipient side to the donor family side. We always love to see that when a grateful recipient who has received this incredible gift wants to say thank you, even if it's just a simple thank you. Some people do go on to want to meet, but that's not always the case. But I think it brings a measure of healing when the donor family sees that gratitude and can understand that this gift was something so meaningful to someone. So New England Donor Services has an aftercare program with a variety of resources for families, different things that might help in the grief journey, different ways to memorialize a loved one. We have special events that we invite families to, like our Blue and Green Walks, that are all about the donor and the donor family and what this gift means to the community and to the recipient. And it's important that after the death of someone that we help to remember them, and that we say their names, and that we provide a space for families to be able to celebrate their lives that their loved ones lived and then gave to others. So we have this aftercare program, and then families are also welcome to become involved with the organization through sharing their story. We firmly believe that the most impactful way to encourage more people to sign up and become registered donors is by sharing both the donor family's story and the recipient story, so that people can understand that this is really a human issue. It's a connection issue. And we think that when people hear stories like Brad's, donor family stories, and how much donation meant to them, that it makes it sound like, wow, this is something I can do. This is something that I want to do.
Don't interrupt. Totally true. So I've done a bunch of events in the past, whether it's a table or at a fair or the block party or things like that. And, people have come up and they've talked and they, said, are you registered to be? No, I'm not really. And then, you tell them a story, and they actually, there's a face that they can say, wow, actually, I can actually, really, really help a person. New England Donor Services, that they're lights out. The organization is fantastic. But sometimes, at the tables, they're employees that are there that the people just assume that they're getting paid to, market their services. When you have actual people that have been touched, either living donors, or somebody who has received an organ, to actually talk to those people and say, look, you doing this could help somebody like myself. we've had people say, I wasn't going to do it, but after talking to you people, now I'm going to go home and I'm going to sign up and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And it's very easy to sign up. And I'm sure Caitlin can talk to more about signing up for people who are interested in making sure that it's on their license.
You just took the questions away from my mouth. But,
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be, on Tyngsborough's front porch. Caitlin, what roles do these personal stories like Brad, or so many that you guys share, play in the awareness in changing minds of people?
They're so important. I do think that that's what motivates people to think about their own donation decision. When it becomes less of an abstract idea and when you can understand through listening and hearing about how donation really helps people and impacts lives, and see that anyone can be a donor. I mean, that's another myth that we hear, which, this one at least is out of good intentions. People say, "Oh, I don't think I can be a donor because I'm too old. I'm 75 and I'm a big drinker, or I have hepatitis." Like there are no rule outs for becoming a registered donor. So I would really encourage people that if this speaks to you, if after hearing Brad's story and understanding the care that goes into organ and tissue donation, that if this is something that speaks to you, to register in Massachusetts through the RMV, or you can register on your iPhone through the health app. But these stories they're so meaningful, and they touch people. They can see that, wow, I can have this kind of impact on someone else. And in a way, life goes on in a different way, but you're allowing life to go on through donation.
And as we approach Father's Day, we reflect on second chances. What is the joint message from the two of you that you want to share with families that may be listening, or those that are, maybe in waiting for an organ?
You want to go first?
Sure. If you're waiting, stay strong and just, do what you have to do. Follow whatever the doctors are telling you to do. And it's a workout. You have to take your medication. You have to, in my case, I had to exercise. I had to do stuff I need to do to get prepared and get ready. There are many, many people that are waiting on a VAD or somewhere that aren't even in the hospital that are on the list, and it's even harder there because you got to keep strong and you have to focus on what you're doing when you don't have nurses and doctors that are on you all the time. You have maybe a family member saying, you shouldn't be eating that, or you should be eating this, or, and so you got to stay strong. You got to just believe that, your day is going to come. My message would be just, if you're not an organ donor, get out, register. And I think the other thing is that make it known to your family. If you're a registered organ donor, make it known to your spouse, make it known to your parents, make it known to your kids. Because even though you are, they are going to ask your family, are you still okay with us doing this? And if your spouse is very against it, even though you're an organ donor, there is a chance that they may not actually take your organs. So if that's your belief and that's what you want to do, make sure you let everybody know that this is your intentions. And so if you're not registered, register and help somebody like myself. And, give me that second chance and give me the chance to, have a child and have a great life and now give back to the community and help the people of Tyngsborough and other communities.
Caitlin?
That's tough to follow. I should have gone first. No, I think that it's important to think about hope and community when it comes to donation. It's a tough world out there, and everyone's kind of feeling it in different ways. But when I think about my role with the organization is that I get to help people every day, and I get to help people that want to help others, which is doubly beautiful. So thinking about how you can just be a good neighbor, and donation to me fits right into that. By registering as a donor, you're giving hope to someone in need. And, the world needs more of that. So if we can all do that and do our share, then I think we're in a good place. But consider your feelings when it comes to donation. Talking to your family is a great idea. Registering your decision through RMV or through the health app on your iPhone is the next great step to show your commitment to a really special cause.
Brad, you talked about retirement. which is weird because you're not retirement age, and that's neither
No.
here or there. But what's something that you never thought you plan on doing? What's next for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of a business guy and want to maybe get a taco truck or something.
In addition to you also run a vacuum.
I do. I have a carpet cleaning business. Suck It Up Carpet Cleaning. Yeah, and so we do that. And even though I'm technically going part time, I feel that it's going to give me the ability to spend more time with you and doing more stuff like this to talk about fire safety and that type of stuff, and focus more on getting into the schools and doing that stuff. As a captain, I have a lot of besides running calls, there's paperwork and there's a lot of stuff that I have to do, and stepping back in that role, as essentially just as a firefighter, it gives me the ability to now focus on a lot of these other things that I kind of put on the back page, because the town is so busy now. We have so many calls now. I say this all the time. When I first started, we have these pagers at 7:00 at night. The pager went off. Right. And the reason why it went off is to make sure that the pager was working.
Yes.
Now we don't have that issue at all. When you're running, 8 to 12 calls a day or whatever, you don't need to know that the pager is working. And so when I'm really busy on a 24-hour shift, all this other stuff kind of goes to the wayside. And so I have a bunch of programs that I would love to establish, this and that. And, take some time off a little bit and spend some time with my family. And I can't imagine that there's not some sort of business opportunity that's going to be in the future that I'm gonna take on also.
Any bucket list items, personal bucket list items that you want to share with the people of Tyngsborough?
No, not really. I've been looking at these Viking cruises. I think I need to be a little older to do it yet, but I think it'd be great to do that. And I'd like to go to Europe, and I would like to travel around and do that type of stuff too. So there's a variety of things, but again, I'm still young. I'm not ready for elderly housing just yet, and having somebody feed me butterscotch pudding. But it's time goes by fast, and spending time with my kid and my wife and my family is great, and this is what it's all about. This is really what it's all about.
That is you, isn't it?
It is. I'm sorry.
Is that a call?
It is not a call.
Oh,
it's not a call. It's a scam call from somebody trying to sell me solar or something like that, but it's not a fire call.
Well, the fire chief was in recently, and he actually turned off his radio. I was like, really? What if it's a call? You could go. You're a fireman.
Right.
I always ask this last question for everyone from town that appears on the program. What, besides what we've talked about, what's one thing that people do not know about you?
One thing that people do not know about me.
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be your favorite song, genre, hobby.
I don't know. I'm pretty much an open book. I'm not sure I have anything that people don't know about me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry, I can't help you with that.
That's fine. We'll get you on the other podcast series.
All right, perfect.
Brad Biscornet, captain with the Tyngsborough Fire Department, and Caitlin Brenabuzzi with New England Donor Services. Thanks so much for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
After we wrapped the official interview, Brad and Caitlin stayed on a bit longer. What followed was a heartfelt conversation on advocacy and the cancer of silence in donor awareness. Here's a glimpse of that.
He goes, what did you get? And I said, I got a new heart. He goes, oh, you're kidding me. I don't believe it. And that guy actually ran with me for like the next, half a mile, just talking to me about, going through the process and all the other stuff. So yeah, I try to advocate the best I can for, for Donate Life and New England Organ Donor Bank. It's just, like I said before, it's a lights out organization. They're great. They are fantastic. They do so much for the community. We've done flag raisings. We've done, booths. I've gone to the hospital. I've done everything I possibly can to try to give back, get the word out, and get the message out. And it's fulfilling to me. And hopefully somebody's getting out of it. And even if it's kind of hokey, but even if I make change one or two people's minds to be a registered donor, I think that we're already ahead of the game doing that.
You know what? The one thing I didn't ask you, and I'd stopped the recording. Ryan, are we still recording? Yeah. All right, perfect. When you do this activism work,
yep.
do you talk to kids that are maybe on the list? Because you were a kid with
right. Right. So I don't. I have occasionally. They have asked me in the past to go to the hospital and talk to somebody who's been waiting. And it wasn't a kid. It's usually because now I'm kind of affiliated with the Brigham now as opposed to Boston Children's.
Sure.
But I've gone back there, and I got to tell you, I kind of have mixed feelings with doing that. If it's going to help them out, that's great. But it's almost I feel like I'm there. I got mine, not really but you're still waiting and this and that. I kind of really have mixed feelings. And so I kind of go into it and say, look I was in the same position. We're dealing with making funeral arrangements at this point. And, you have to stay strong and you have to do what you can do and get this, get this support group. I briefly kind of said, yeah, my wife helped me out and did this stuff. Without the support group of, my wife and my family and all the other stuff, I'd be dead in the water, literally. It takes a village. And Ken can probably speak to that. They ask you before they even work you up for a transplant. They have, do you have family members? When we give you this transplant, and you're going to need care afterwards for your medication and all this other stuff, are you going home to a place that has people that can help you out? And, you have to have a psych evaluation. You have to have a medical workup. You have to have all this stuff. It's a big process. You need to meet with a social worker. You need to meet with all this stuff for them to say, do you have this unit that's going to help support you? It was very different for me because I had a problem all my life, right? So I always took medication. I always did what I was supposed to do, that type of stuff. But you have people who have lived a regular life. Maybe they don't have the best habits, drugs, alcohol, whatever the case may be.
Right.
They have a heart attack or something that destroys their heart. The next day that they're on the list, they end up getting a heart and they come back. They can't operate like they did prior to that, right? They're taking rejection meds. They're taking all this other stuff. And so if you don't have this unit to help you, of family members in a support group, friends, whatever, it makes it extraordinarily difficult. And in my situation after my transplant, when I had a trach and I couldn't talk and I could not move and I wasn't even strong enough to lift my finger to touch my nose,
wow.
I needed people to advocate for me because I couldn't make any decision if I needed to. So.
All right. And to learn more about organ donation, visit the New England Donor Services website at neds.org or donatelife.net. And that is all the time that we have for this episode of Entering Tyngsborough. To learn more about the town of Tyngsborough and its community, you can visit the town website at tyngsboroughma.gov. For the town of Tyngsborough, I'm Roni Camille. Thanks so much for joining us. And until next time, wishing you the best of goodbyes.